Good morning, everyone. Once we have all the council members into the room, I will bring them in one by one. Let it be known that once I bring you into the room, you will be live on YouTube, social media, and channel 1024. For those council members and staff that are joining us, as well as residents, I'm going to wait till all council members are in the waiting room, bring them in one at a time, and then we can start. Good morning, council. I'm going to start bringing you in one by one. Just as a reminder, once you come into the room, you will be live.
Good morning.
Morning, Kathy.
Good morning, Mayor Joe.
Morning.
Good morning. Is that Dave?
Yeah.
Good morning, Dave.
Morning.
Mr. President, currently the only council member I do not have on the call is Councilman Hughes.
About the 1 year? Yes. And Sean is the one from with the community school. Sean is the one. Okay. Okay. And Harding. We did, as Amory mentioned, talk about that they all have, that many of them have similar backgrounds. The interesting thing was interviewing them in person because you don't get from their CVs.
Mel, I'm going to leave you on mute there until your phone call is over. We got everybody?
I don't know. I've got City of Erie, Pennsylvania, City Council meeting on there. Nothing.
I hear you talking.
You hear me talking, okay. I think I see Kathy. Update complete, okay. Yeah, Kathy's there. Hi, Kathy.
Good morning.
Hiya. Come run.
Good morning, everyone. Still working on getting everybody in.
Good morning, Jim.
I thought you spent the night.
Almost. Did you
Yes, sir.
move the bell?
Yeah. Um,
I'm live now, you can hear me?
not on here. I can.
Good, all right, that makes you. Mike's got it right.
There you go. You're on, or your volume's on.
Perfect,
Uh,
thank you.
Council President and Councilman Brzezinski, since you're in the same room, and this will probably also go for Keys, if I do mute you, it's because there's an echo or feedback going on. So just make sure that you unmute yourself if you do wish to speak, because I may have muted you for a technical reason.
Very good. Thanks, buddy. I must admit it has gotten a lot better since its inception.
And we'll only keep getting better.
You're doing a good job, Frank. Thank Michael too, by the way. You didn't hear that, right?
Yeah, Gleason's
Yeah.
doing great too.
Oh, okay.
Why I let Mike do mine.
Jim,
Yes.
I don't think Lori can get in the building. Is she
No,
there?
Lori's in the building. She just can't get on the Zoom yet.
Oh, okay.
Michael's having a little trouble right now.
Hey, Jim, I'm upstairs. Does Mike need me to come down and help out?
Mike, do you need anything? Frank's upstairs if you need help, he said.
I feel like that was a skeptical yes. I'll come down real quick.
Big polka music live, yeah. You're on, buddy? Good morning, everyone. Morning, Paul. Good morning, Mayor. I believe we have our city controller with us. Teresa. Ms. Rosnick, are you with us also?
I'm on. Hi, Jim.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
I know we have the agenda, but is there anything else before the agenda council would like to discuss? And with that being said, is there anything on the agenda council would like to discuss before our meeting today?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear
Yep.
you. Yeah.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Hey,
Let's all remember our good manners.
Doesn't go far enough. If we're going to remember good manners, we should remember process. That's what it's always been about. Whenever I ask questions, it's about process. It's about how we took $100,000 from a donor who was anonymous. I asked questions about that, and fortunately, the newspaper filed the right to know and got those answers. It's about how we fill city council seats when there's a vacancy. It's about how we fill board appointments. And yes, it is about how streets are renamed. I'm not taking a scolding for standing up for the citizens of Erie. I don't think you realize how this is playing out there, some of you. I'm getting messages all over the place.
Yeah.
I am getting messages too.
All right, I'm going to say what I have been waiting a year to say. 2 years ago, I announced that I wanted to run for city council president in 2009 and for 2020. Last year, I was sandbagged when I learned that the current city council president was going to run for a second term and that the vice president was going to run for a second term. For 3 years, I've served on city council where there is no leadership, where we don't have goals, where we don't have an agenda, where we just go along with the budget. I have never been in this kind of a situation before. I've been on boards and I've run meetings and I have created agendas and I have clearly articulated my opinion on things. There is no leadership on council, and that's why a year from now, you're going to have the same situation where you're looking at long-term problems with the budget, lack of procedure, and everybody just do their own thing. So I've learned my lesson. Don't try and do the right thing. Don't try and do your homework. Just go along to get along. I'm going to remind you that somebody who had applied for a city council seat told me that the reason I don't make progress is because I don't go drink at the clubs. What a statement is that about Erie? When we were considering people for an open city council position, there was a highly qualified woman who had applied, and 2 people on council questioned whether she could do the job because she has 3 children. That's the kind of attitude that some council members bring to the table. This is 2020, not 1950. Unfortunately, city council still operates as though it's 1950 or 1960 or 1970 when you had, or the 1980s when you had the 3 amigos. I take it all in. I take notes. I remember everything that happened. Attempts to try and make this body more professional have failed.
Mr. President, can I speak?
Sure.
This has kind of been on my back too, and I wish I would have spoke up sooner, but there's been a lot of things that happen on this council, but I think we're all from a different variety of backgrounds, personalities, opinions, values, but despite it, I think we all serve in public office to preserve and protect the future of our community. We're all here for the same reason, I think. But in all cases, the common goal should be that council needs to agree to disagree, especially with contentious issues. We have a lot of things that have come up to council, and a lot of times that there's been different comments here and there, but definitely in public meetings, we need to serve as an example. We need to practice civility, professionalism, and decorum in our discussions. We debate some difficult and complex issues, and again, there's some personalities, but we have to respect everybody's opinion. We have to
Yes.
come up to the challenge and serve as an example to our citizens. But this definitely does not allow council members to make impertinent or disparaging comments about any other council member. We're never going to agree on everything. And again, that's why there's 7 council members. We each bring a different point of view to council. But I would recommend that Mr. Brzezinski apologize for the past comments. I think we all agree that they weren't the right thing to do, and we should have spoke up sooner. So I just want to go on record and say that.
Well, I do agree with you, David, too. We do all, whether we're male or female on this council, have to be professional. And I have stated in the past, we don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to agree on anything, but we need to be professional and respectful to all our colleagues. You may not agree with said stance on whatever issue it may be, but with that being said, it doesn't give anyone to interrupt somebody's stance on something. And it's gone as far as the mayor getting interrupted, our finance director getting interrupted, our fellow council people. We got to be more professional as a council as a whole. This is not an easy job, and I'll be honest with you, it's gotten a little tougher. We need to stick with the real key major issues that affect this city. I apologize. There's a reason for dedicating streets for certain individuals, because they've been an asset to the community, and it unfortunately has never been an issue in the past. And we can agree, we can disagree on that too, but we got to stick to the big picture, the tax-paying citizens, our monies, the budget. That's all I have to say at this point. Sure. Sure.
Yeah, I would just like to agree that, decency and order are kind of pet peeves of mine. And I think that that's the way a council should conduct itself. That being said, you know, whatever's in the media is not necessarily what is transpiring or has transpiring, or that people have been silent, or that people don't care, or people don't stand up for people. I think that it's a very dangerous thing that we allow these things to play out in the media. I also, you know, in a little book I read that says, you know, if you have odd against your brother, go to your brother. Don't go downtown. Don't go to the Times News. That's all.
Is there anything else on the budget council would like to discuss? Or on the budget, on the agenda, I apologize. And it can be budget related too. I don't have a problem with that. With that, it's 9 o'clock. Lori, are you with us?
Yes, Mr. President, I am here.
Mr. President,
Yes,
a
sir.
moment of silence for Carmi Hogan Munch.
We'll do that after we start the meeting.
Just give you
Hey,
a heads
Jim,
up.
can I say something before you start?
Sure.
I just wanted to thank everybody for, I guess, putting up with myself and my staff for the last 3 weeks of the budget sessions. And also I wanted to thank my staff, Lisa, Christine, Kim, Chris, and Andrew for all the work they've done on the budget, all the preparation, and all the questions they've answered for you as a group. So that's about it from us. And Kathy, and then also the controller's office also for all the help they've given us too.
Well, we definitely appreciate the efforts, Paul. I think it's been mentioned in the past, sometimes when you have more money, as we did end up with the water lease deal, it actually makes your job probably a little tougher, to the extent that all eyes are on you and us, because now we're supposed to be Santa Claus, or just try to make everybody's lives better. But we appreciate the efforts. We still got a long road to go here, though. So get ready, buckle up. With that, if Lori's ready, we will start our meeting.
Okay, roll call for the city council meeting of Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020 at 9 a.m. Mr. Winarski, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, and Mr. Witherspoon. Please stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Jimmy, you want to announce the moment of silence? Excuse me, the moment of silence. Carmi Hogan Munch passed away. Longtime East Side District Justice and fantastic family.
Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nice flag, Mel.
Motion to accept the minutes from the November 18th, 2020 city council meeting and bills for payment on December 4th and December 11th, 2020. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. This takes us to citizens to be heard.
We got a few, Mike?
If the citizens would state their name and address and keep their comments to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Art Leopold, you're up.
Yes, good morning. Art Leopold, 5341 Apple Grove Lane, 30 p.m. Honored councilmen and councilwomen, City Administrative Representative Renee, and citizens. I speak in support of the equality of men and women. I know disagreement is normal. From the clash of opinions comes the light of truth. But we must remember to respect one another, treat each other with comedy, collegiality during our discussions and conversations. And I would expect that of council, would expect it of anyone. I also support the placement of city funds and investments in sustainable financial vehicles. And I appreciate the conversation and the discussion that goes on regarding that issue. I will not forget that we need to update our police use of force policies, along with the formation of a civilian review board. We need also to continue to consider where we can use community benefit agreements, CBAs, for the benefit of the citizens. I do encourage the administration during this month and the city council to review the successes and the failures of the past year and to gauge the progress and plan how we can move forward. Please do so to be accountable to yourselves and the citizens. And I thank you for your efforts today.
Thank you, sir.
Freda Tepfer.
This is Freda Tepfer. I live at 1738 West 23rd Street, Erie, Pennsylvania. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I want to kind of take off from where Liz said. Process is very important. And some things there is not an existing process, but it's appropriate to have one. When I ran for city council three years ago, one of my issues was the open and fair appointment to boards and commissions. And that is still something that has yet to have a real process developed. I know several people are talking about it and working on it. Process does help to add to decorum. One thing I've learned in life is if you pick at a scab, it's going to start bleeding again. And part of the issue at the last meeting was somebody picked at a scab that really didn't need to be. We were having a discussion on dedicating a street at the time. That's all that needed to be said during the official meeting. It didn't need to be any mention of somebody or something. And I do agree with Councilman Brennan that people who offend somebody so deeply and personally and publicly do owe people an apology. It's now snow season again. And as I have said many, many times, and I have said before the quality of life ordinance was passed, the quality of life ordinance should not be focused purely on residential properties. There are many instances of commercial and church properties in this town where sidewalks are poorly maintained all year round and especially during the snow season. It's not uncommon for businesses to plow their driveways and to leave huge berms across the sidewalk, huge berms that take a long time to melt. It also happens in residential areas, but I'm more concerned with the commercial areas because I have the same issue and I have to make sure my sidewalk is accessible after the driveway is plowed. But I think it's time that the city require permitting for the people who are doing the plowing, and that they should receive some kind of educational material about their responsibility to maintain access on the sidewalks. And I think that it's nice that we're upgrading the code enforcement software, but that software and that effort for code enforcement should be applied to businesses. I can't tell you how many times I've reported 12th between Liberty and Cherry, and that sidewalk is still impassable to somebody with a mobility device. Let's be fair to everybody. Also, as I've said before, I think it's important that however we invest the money for the water authority, that none of the money go into fossil fuel development or fossil fuel businesses. I have helped to have Kathy Schaff receive information about people that the city can consult about this, and I hope they will utilize that information. I guess those are my main concerns, but I really urge citizens in this, residents in this city, to complain if the sidewalks are blocked, especially by the driveways being the berms across the sidewalk next to driveways. Call the city response line and let them know it's our right to have use of the sidewalks. And if there are unmaintained sidewalks in commercial areas, call the city and let them know. Let's make this city accessible to everybody. Thank you.
Elspeth? Elspeth, I'll give you 30 seconds to unmute, and then we'll have to come back to you. All right, Elspeth, we're going to come back to you. Cindy Purvis?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, we can.
Okay. I do have two comments. I seem to have Mr. Brzezinski's apology to Miss Allen. And if he has not apologized yet, I would encourage him to man up and be the person we elected and apologize. I fully expect that apology to come. Also, I'm a bit disappointed I did not hear from Mr. Witherspoon. And also, Mr. Keys, I did not feel your comments were really appropriate. I think you need to be straight on.
Ms. Purvis, you're supposed to address council as a body, please.
Okay. Then
Thank
as
you.
the body, I expect all of you to stand
Thank
up for what's right. And what is right is to be respectful. And yes, from time to time, every single one of us lets our anger get away from us. I understand that. And when we do, we all, out of respect for each other, apologize. And that is what I fully expect. And I expect all the rest of you to stand with that statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Elspeth?
Elspeth Cayley, 1232 West 11th Street. I would like to thank council members who do advocate for process and procedure, because I agree it does take away from disagreements that could be had and rude behavior that could come. from those disagreements. Yeah, I'd like to see some apologies be made, some denouncing of that sort of misogynist and sexist behavior and speech. And going forward, you guys all need to do a better job. I agree that some of the statements that were made at the beginning of this about, publicly chastising the behavior, if you're going to publicly display that kind of behavior, you need to, if you don't agree with it, you need to publicly say you don't agree with it. If it's happening and you're saying, hey, I'm sorry people are treating you like that behind closed doors, no one knows about it. So thank you for those of you. Thank you, Ruckus. Thank you for those of you who did say something to denounce that sort of behavior. Thank you. Got to deal with these people and cats and dogs.
Thank you very much.
Lydia?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, we can.
Excellent. Yes, I just wanted to, I guess, support all the statements that have already been made thus far. And just as a newly elected official in a different part of the county, I'm not an Erie City resident, just outside of Edinburgh, that I look to other local elected officials for role models and guidance. And I was so deeply disappointed by the words and actions, and also, I think sometimes more importantly, the silence that happened during last week's meeting. And I was inspired by the strength and resilience of a certain member who stood her ground despite the comments being made. So again, I think as a council, your actions reach so much further than I think you may even realize. And you can either be a force for good or a force for failure, or for a lack of progress, or for deterioration of decency. Thank you.
Lydia, could you give me your address, please, for the record?
4970 Kinter Hill Road.
Randy Barnes?
You can hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Council President Winarski. And yeah, I appreciate all politicians. You have to have really thick skin, because not only do you take it from the taxpayers you serve, you take it from each other, and every so often the voters to decide on the behavior they accept and they don't accept. But I want to talk this morning about the money that you're getting from the Water Department 40-year deal. Originally, this was planned to be pay down debt, pay against the pension, refinance bonds into long-term bonds. That was a year ago. Number one, we have not seen on paper how much it will cost in penalty if we pay these bonds down ahead of time. It's a very small amount, but no one will tell you that, because the plan has already been baked in that we're going to get $15 million of this money, almost 20% of it, to run the city for 3 years. You're going to vote to send $2 million to who? Groner over at county, he's your development guy, but he gets paid by Kathy Dahlkemper, and we're sending $2 million to him? What's this about? Oh, let's get back to what the finances are in this big picture of what this mayor has done to you. The number 2 man in banking in the city, of the biggest bank in Erie, this is what he has done to the city now. Got to remember, the summer before he took office, Senate gave him a bonus of a $10 million bond council approved for money for him to spend his first year. Shortly after he was in office, Mr. Lichtenwalder, the financial architect of this scheme for the past 15 years, refinanced some bonds, pushed the payment out, and you got $18 million of money for the mayor to play with a year and a half ago. So since he's been in office, he's had $28 million of money to play with. And you want to give him another 15? He's asking for another 15. And then he says, hey, let me invest this money for you. I'm going to invest this money. You know what that means in 3 years? He's going to want more of it because you're digging a hole. You're digging deeper, 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 deeper hole. Does anyone understand this in council? Do you understand a year ago you were told, let's do this deal. Let me get 40 years worth of money. Let me get my trust fund. Let me take all that money from that trust fund. No one else can have it for the next 40 years. I want it because I know what to do with it. And he sold you a bill of goods. And all 7 of you went along with it, except Winarski. President Winarski voted no. That means nothing. One person votes no, that's a nothing vote. That's a nothing vote. You understand? Do you 7 of you understand what the hole is you're putting the city in? Have you heard this council? Have you heard this president, or I'm sorry, the mayor say he's going to hold the line on his salaries, at-will employees? Have you heard the mayor say he's going to ask his at-will employees to take a 5 or 10% reduction? No, because all things are bright and sunny in Erie. We're a welcoming city. We got an $85 million slush fund to play with. You understand what that does? When you use $15 million to run the city for 3 years, how much more in the hole are you in 3? Oh, that's right. In 3 years, you're gonna get all this new revenue. You got Alerta. Well, guess what? You don't get any money from Alerta for 10 years. Alerta's so good, Alerta forever. Don't have a time limit on Alerta. For now and forever, 40 years, like you did with the slush fund, you just took 40 years of slush fund, say for the next 40 years, if you build in the city of Erie, there's no taxes for 10 years. Hey, why not? Why not? But you know what, your council, you're gonna sit by and let this mayor, the same guy that voted for his own bond when he was a vice president on PNC and a council president, voted for his own bond, then resigned in embarrassment. You're gonna let him and the financial architect, Lichtenwalder, who's been pushing out bonds, refinancing bonds, and pushing out balloon payments? See, you can't even survive without that 15 million because you got some big balloon payments coming. But you were supposed to take the $90 million and pay on those bonds, weren't you? But that all went by the wayside because the 6 of you to go along with his plan. The financial genius didn't even know there's callable dates. And yeah, there's a very, very little tiny penalty, maybe a 0.5% of interest, but they don't want to tell you. They don't want to put it on paper. They don't want you to know the whole plan.
Mr. Barnes, your time is up. I'm sorry. And can you give me your address?
Yes, it's 109 Walton Point. Hey, and my number is 450-7059. If any of the 6 or 7 of you want to call and talk about financial planning and what the city ought to do, hey, give me a call.
Time's up.
It's not rocket science, gang.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Barnes, your time is up.
Jim Wirtz.
Good morning, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I echo some of the previous speakers here and would add that it seems odd that in 2020, anyone would have to remind City Council or any public body that the internet serves as a welcome mat to our community. For most outsiders, many of whom may never make their way to the city of Erie, this is their first, and depending on what they see and hear, sometimes their last impression of Erie. In the wake of the 2020 elections, when most of the world was watching Erie as the ultimate swing county in the United States, the actions of some members of City Council changed the tone of that conversation from one of intrigue and awe to one of ridicule and shame. It's because the media outlets in Washington, D.C. Picked up that Zoom confrontation that's been mentioned so many times when one councilman referred to a councilwoman as, quote, a nut and a broad. Not only is such talk unbecoming of a member of council, the chuckling and reactions of other members of council adds to the poor representation of the city, and it gives us all a bad name. Those of us that travel outside of Erie also spend a lot of time selling the community to people who don't know about its potential and the future that many of us work for throughout the region. All of that goodwill is squandered when those same people see in their local news that Erie is governed by folks with misogynistic attitudes toward their colleagues. And people can only assume that such views extend to the community at large. In the course of any day, I spend a good deal of time trying to answer people who ask why they should still vote for Democrats in a city governed by Democrats that's struggling with population loss and decline. The words and actions of members of this council often make those conversations more difficult. And ultimately, the focus of those conversations becomes the future, because it's clear that sometimes when our public officials speak, they speak only for the past. So the next time that the Chamber of Commerce fails to land a new business in Erie or the opportunity zones remain underinvested, you can be sure that the faith of those investors is challenged by old words, old attitudes, and the old ideas they represent. Next year, Erie gets another shot at electing officials of substance who know better than to degrade their colleagues and members of the community in public or in private. The Democratic Party, I assure you, will support candidates who believe in civility and the future that comes with elected officials who represent the cities of Erie in a mindful and respectful manner, because we all deserve better. Thank you.
Mr. Wertz, can we have your address, please?
Yes, 952 West 8th Street.
Anna Lindvay? Anna? And I'll give you 30 seconds to unmute your microphone, then we have to move on, and I'll come back to you. Mr. President, the other two residents to be heard, one dropped their phone in the snow, and the other, Anna, is not able to unmute her microphone, so I don't know how you want to proceed, but that is up to you. You're muted, Jim.
Sorry to hear somebody lost their phone right now, but we will give them a few more seconds here, 30 more seconds, and if we can't reach them, we'll move on, all right?
Mr. President, I think it's fair to move on.
Very good. Lori?
Ordinances for final passage. Council File Ordinance 16-190, also known as Official File Ordinance 46-2020, closing and vacating the southern portion of an existing alleyway adjacent to 950 and 954 West 23rd Street and touching back property line of 2223 and 2209 Cascade Street. Sponsored by Ms. Allen, seconded by Mrs. Shaw, the Council File Ordinance 16-190, and now known as Official File Ordinance 46-2020, be finally passed by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council passes Official File Ordinance 46-2020 by yeas 7, nays 0. Council File number 16-191, also known as 47-2020. An ordinance appropriating the sum of $26,759.53 from unappropriated and unanticipated revenue for the expenditure thereof. This contribution is from the state COVID-19 Fire Rescue and EMS grant. It's sponsored by Mrs. Shaw, seconded by Ms. Allen, the Council File number 16-191, and now known as Official File Ordinance 47-2020, be finally passed by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council passed Official File Ordinance 47-2020 by yeas 7, nays 0. Council File number 16-192, also known as 48-2020, and an ordinance in accordance with the City of Erie General Fund Budget Financial Statements, the sum of $95,744,249.88 is accepted by the City of Erie. This amount represents a prepayment of the current 40-year lease agreement between the City of Erie and the Erie City Water Authority, Erie Waterworks. Sponsored by Mrs. Shaw, seconded by Ms. Allen, the Council File number 16-192, and now known as Official File Ordinance 48-2020, be finally passed by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council pass Official File Ordinance 49-2020 by yeas 7, nays 0. Council File number 16-193, also known as Official File Ordinance 49-2020, an ordinance in accordance with the 2020 City of Erie General Fund financial statements. The sum of $2 million is appropriated from appropriated and anticipated fund balance and revenue for use as a transfer by the City of Erie. This amount represents a transfer from the general fund to the Business Development Loan Fund. Sponsored by Mrs. Shaw, seconded by Mrs. Allen, the Council File Ordinance 16-193, and now known as Official File Ordinance 49-2020, be finally passed by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr.
No.
Keys,
No.
Mr. Keys, no. Mrs. Shaw, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski.
No.
Council File number 49-2020 passes yeas 4, nays 0.
Nays 3.
Nays 3. Thank you. Council File number 16-194, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $127,886.03 from unappropriated and unanticipated revenue for the expenditure thereof. This contribution is from the Erie County CARES Act municipal reimbursement. Sponsored by Mrs. Schaaf, seconded by Ms. Allen. The Council File Ordinance 16-194, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council, read and adopt City Council File Ordinance 16-195 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. Council file number 16195, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $221,191.84 from unappropriated and unanticipated revenue for the expenditure thereof. This contribution is from the Erie County CARES Act Municipal Reimbursement Round 2. Sponsored by Mrs. Schaaf, seconded by Ms. Allen. The council file ordinance 16195, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. Council file number 16195 adopts by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. This takes us to new business.
Move the bill.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Do we have any separations, council?
Number 1.
Very good. Okay, Lori.
Moving the balance of the agenda, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. Resolved by the City Council of the City of Erie that Mr. Abdullah Washington of 327.5 East 6th Street, Erie, PA 16503 is hereby appointed to the Erie Sewer Authority for a term that expires on December 31st, 2023. Mr. Washington will complete the term of John Savelli, who has resigned. Discussion?
I would just like to say, first, that I am, a person of process also. This appointment, because of the resignation, untimely resignation, this appointment had to be filled before the process that the city is putting together is ready. And so I am happy to appoint Mr. Abdullah Washington to the Sewer Authority. I think he'll be an asset to help govern that authority.
Very good, thank you.
Voting on the resolution, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. Motion passes by yeas 7, nays 0. Committee reports.
All right. Miss Allen?
Since our budget session with the police chief, I've been exchanging some emails with him about preparing a resolution to support legislation at the state level to allow municipal police departments to use radar for speeding enforcement. It's a public safety issue, not just on the Bayfront Parkway, but throughout the city where we know people are speeding. And I believe Mel Witherspoon said he would co-sponsor it with me. I didn't have it ready for this meeting because I still have a little bit of work to do on it. So it should be ready for the next meeting. I also want to let the citizens who have been asking about the type of investment that the water proceeds can be put into, there have been advocates to make sure, or to encourage us to invest that, make sure it's not being invested in fossil fuel funds. And we found out last night, actually, because I asked the question of what type of investments that money can go into. And we learned that there are rules from the state about how that money can be invested. It's not going to go into a balanced portfolio. It's going to go into some type of government instrument. And maybe the mayor will be able to, I don't know, Mayor or Renee might be able to further explain that when they're up. Also, there's a press conference at 1:15 today to honor Harry Burley. A year ago, we proclaimed in perpetuity that December 2nd is Harry Burley Day. I would encourage everybody to go to the website for the Harry Burley Society. You can learn about his life. You can play samples of his music. And the more you go into the site and research who Harry Burley was, what he meant to the music world, and what he means to our community, you will be greatly surprised, enlightened, and inspired. Yesterday, I listened to Mahalia Jackson's version of Nobody Knows the Troubles I've Seen. The music really reflects the current state of the world that we're in right now with the pandemic, but it also will give you hope that what happens when an entire people strives and overcomes what our country was built on. So that's all.
Thank you. Ms. Shaw?
I too am happy about the Harry T. Burley Day, that today is his birthday. If you go inside St. Paul's Episcopal Church and close your eyes, you can envision him singing there in the choir where he sang so beautifully back in his day. He was so loved that when he died, I think it was 1949 or something, there were 2,000 people that attended his funeral service. So he definitely brought so much to the world of music and soul singing. I attended the Erie Waterworks meeting, the Disability Roundtable, and the EMTA Authority. And yes, we are in the month of December, and this is a year, December is a time where you reflect and you think about your goals for the future. And I have a year up. I ran with Liz, and I am not going to try to run for re-election. So, this is a time for people who live in our Erie community to step up and learn about process of government. And that when I ran, I had attended some meetings, and I just wanted to help Erie. And it's, I really don't have the personality to be a politician. So I, as a vice president, sometimes you think, well, a vice president goes into presidency, and I would defer being president to someone more capable, because Randy Barnes talked about you have to have a thick skin, and my personality is not for a thick skin. I take everything to heart. So I just want to say we all have something that we bring to the table. And during the pandemic, every day of the week when we would have meetings, I got to know the people in office and the administration, and they're really working very hard. That's all. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Couple items I have here is the parking authority. The authority, I updated council before on this. The authority presented a draft plan to take over the parking enforcement along with estimates and funding and revenue. A meeting took place last week, which I could not attend. Another meeting is going to be scheduled soon to discuss and refine the proposal. I will then share the plan with council and get everyone's input. This transition does make sense. You know, I think both the city administration and the parking authority know this needs to happen once we get it all figured out. And the council will need to pass several ordinances to make the transition. The challenge of the transition is going to be the period itself with the initial ramp up costs needed. In the long run, given this arrangement will be better financially for both the authority and the city, which is very important. The Bayfront Parkway, the peer review committee, I know that was discussed by Brian McNulty in his letter to council during our discussions and study sessions. Well, they're making preparations for the peer review committee to discuss the roundabouts and the pedestrian bridges. And they did ask the council member to be part of the team. I think given my communications and concerns, I know many council members had contacted Brian and discussed different things, but he kind of assumed that I would represent council. I did contact several members of council to discuss, but December 17th is the first meeting, and I will share this info and see how we can all be part of that discussion. Lastly is the just following up on the city budget session last night. As some may know, several members of council requested put a proposal together for a 3% cut across the board. But in lieu of the across the board cuts, we discussed having the mayor administration take a look and see what cuts that could have happened. Majority of council was not in favor of this proposal, but there was an alternate plan could be considered to possibly make some cuts. We're still working on that, and it'll be the session will be continued. If it is impossible to achieve this percentage because of different agreements in place, my hope is that the mindset of doing more with less and running the city like a business will continue to be implemented due to the financial condition that we have currently. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Mr. Witherspoon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have a committee report, but I would just like to say that I'm unable to attend the Harry T. Burley event due to a previous commitment. However, several years ago, I participated in the Harry T. Burley play at Mercyhurst Prep, and he was an outstanding individual and was an outstanding person and one heck of a performer. So I think what we did to make Harry T. Burley Day was definitely the right thing to do and bring his legacy to light to the Erie community. Also, I'd like to say to Kathy, you are a politician, Kathy, the kind we all should look up to because of your heart, that you care about people. You took the homeless as a personal project and brought it to the city's attention and to council's attention. Your decision is your decision, and you have to live with it. You take care, my friend. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Mr. Brzezinski.
Yeah, no committee reports or anything like that. I'd like to thank the citizens that called in and are concerned. I'd also like to tell Mr. Wirtz to do his homework before he starts shooting his mouth off. Anyway, for my part in this whole craziness, my apology is sent out. But don't ever forget, you kick a sleeping dog, you could get bit. So both sides are wrong on this thing. The broad comment was a terrible comment. I thought my mic was off when I was letting out some exhaustion, so to speak. frustration. But hopefully we can bury that, move forward, share ideas, and be a better council next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Keys.
I don't have a report. Just that we're continuing to work on the budget. We should have it finished soon. And if no one else has reported, it looks like, we're not going to have a tax increase or a fee increase for 2021. And I think that that's a pretty big deal, that we were able to hold the line during the COVID, and no one's going to have to pay extra this upcoming year.
Thank you, sir. Only comments I have this morning. I do want to thank Ms. Schaaf. You are a trooper. You've been a big part of this council this year with your daily reports. We appreciate the non-political end that you bring to this. I still don't consider myself a politician either, but they keep telling me I'm one of those. But I do want to thank you, though, for being a great vice president, and you're still not done yet, so don't even think about it. Anyway, although some comments earlier were directed at me, what I want to try as this council again is just alliterate on professionalism and respecting everybody's opinion, whether you agree or disagree with it. Let everybody voice their opinion in a mannerly way that at the end of the day, we still can get along. That's all there is to it. One person, one council isn't going to change everything. We got to realize that, but we are all in this together, and we just want to make it work. We really do. Other than that, I do not have anything else. We are still working on the budget end of it here. Like Mr. Keys has stated, trying to definitely do away with the garbage and sewer rate increases. Once again, they might have been $20 to the average homeowner. Meanwhile, as in our agenda this morning, we did release $2 million of taxpayers, which is for grant you economic development. But the people of Erie got to know that $500,000 of that is being given away. Like we have received as a city different grants from our great grant writers that we have. And naturally on the agenda today was some monies we received from different grants. We are the party that's going to be giving out some grants to the tune of $500,000, just so you understand that. I agree that possibly can help spur development, but I just, when we're in our financial situation that we are, that's why I voted against that. But moving on, let's make the best of that. And we'll move on to our City Controller, Ms. Stankiewicz. Do you have any comments this morning?
I don't have any report today.
Alrighty, thank you. Ms. Lamus?
Good morning, Council.
Good morning.
I have just a few things. Glad others mentioned Harry T. Burley Day. That'll be exciting. I hope people can tune in for the press conference today. He's left a real legacy. Second, as Dave mentioned, we are currently reviewing a proposal from the Erie Parking Authority, looking at the numbers to try to figure out how we can move forward with that and we're looking forward to having something for council to review soon. Third, we're almost ready to have a process ready for the authorities, boards, and commissions. I have a list of all of the terms that have expired and what each authority, board, or commission is looking for in terms of skill sets or diverse perspectives. And so I'll be sharing that with you all soon. We're working on getting some additional information up on the website so that anybody who's an interested candidate can go there to explore the different authorities to see what the role is, what the responsibilities are, when the meetings are, what the terms are, those kinds of things. So that way it's all in one place and people can easily access that. Fourth, just on behalf of the Erie Downtown Partnership, and we'll be talking about this in the press conference tomorrow. But I also wanted to let residents know that there will be a holiday tree sale this Friday, December 4th in Perry Square from 5 to 9 p.m. This is the only day that this will happen. Mason Farms will be down with all kinds of different sized trees. And we're hoping residents will come down and enjoy some holiday treats and music. Of course, masks are required and people are encouraged to socially distance. In light of that, I just want to quickly talk about the community spread we're experiencing right now of COVID-19. In the last 6 days, we've had 805 new confirmed cases in Erie County. And I can't encourage people enough to wear their masks, practice social distancing, wash and sanitize hands, and please stay home if you're sick. At this point, we don't know, when we get sick, if it's COVID or if it's a common cold or if it's the flu. And so if you're feeling under the weather, please stay home. And then I just want to address two other things that came up. The $2 million for Chris Groner, while Chris Groner is now a county employee, he is also still a city employee. And this funding is going to be used specifically for economic development within the city. He will be able to leverage this funding to get additional funding from the county, the state, and the federal government to redevelop and put into reuse some properties. I think it's, exactly because of the situation we're in right now that it's important that we do this, because the only way we're going to get out of this situation is if we can expand and grow the economy. And if we can get more people to move into the city and we can get more businesses to open in the city, even though we have a 10-year LRTA in effect and will not see an increase in taxes from any improvements that are made, we will see an increase in property taxes from anybody who locates here that's not currently here. And we will also see an increase from employees working in the city in terms of the earned income tax. And that's substantial. So, and then finally on the Erie Waterworks funding, and I'm going to defer to Ed a little bit to talk about the third class city code and the narrow things that we can invest in. But just want to let the residents know, because of some things that were said, we are trying to use that money to get out from under our debt. We do not want to refinance. We don't want to refund. We don't want to have to take out additional bonds. We're trying to take a long-term approach. Our plan is to use that funding to pay down the debt as quickly as we can. We're currently looking at which bonds are callable, when they're callable, what the penalties are if they're not callable, what we can invest in, how much we can earn in interest, and so that we can find the proper mix of what it makes sense to pay off early and what it makes sense to invest. And we're going to make a data-driven decision. And when we have a proposal ready, we will, of course, be presenting it to council for review and input. But we're in the process of doing that. And I don't know if the mayor wants to add anything, but I know Ed has a handle and was getting ready to prepare a memo actually on the narrow scope of what third class cities are allowed to invest municipal funding.
Thank you, Ms. Lamus. I think, Mr. Betza, would you like to follow up?
Certainly I would. There are, as Ms. Lamus said, there are 16 authorized investments under the third class city code and other provisions of state law. The idea is that there's a bit of a problem with the legislation because I don't think it fully contemplated this type of situation. The general rule is that you can't take taxpayer money and wing it and put it in the stock market or take it to Vegas and try to double your money real quick because you're taking a risk with taxpayer money. So the Pennsylvania law limits the types of investments that you can have really to protect taxpayers. There's also a provision that any type of investment has to be a sound financial investment. And there's a bit of a rub between those two provisions because when you're talking about money in the nature of, $80 to $90 million, putting it in a low interest type account can be perhaps not financially sound. So I think that a lot of us feel some pressure to try to get this thing resolved. And I guess what I'll say is this: I'm going to send out a memo to council and to the mayor and to finance, just outlining the specific authorized types of investments. And again, there's 16, some of them apply, some of them don't, but there's 16 of them, and I'll go through each of them in a memo. There was a rush to get the money from the water authority, and that rush seemed appropriate because the basis of that rush was that the rates provided us with more money. And if you recall, some of the original numbers that we were hearing about was that we would get somewhere around 70 to 80 million. Well, we ended up getting over 90 million. So the way that worked, the rush to get the money, I think, has worked to the benefit of the city. I will suggest, I don't have any interest in decision making and where the money goes, but I'll suggest that there is much less of a rush to invest it right now. Figure out what's best for the city. We've talked about bonds. We've talked about penalties for bond early payment, non-penalties. Do we hold the money? Do we invest it now? Do we wait? All of that can be made in the next couple of months. It doesn't have to be made before the end of the calendar year. So that's why I'm sending out the memo, just so everybody can look. There can be brainstorming about what's the best way. What bonds do you pay off? What debt do you get rid of? What investments do you make? All that can be made over the next several months, even conceivably next several years. It doesn't have to, there's no urgency right now. You've got the money. It's not going to lose its interest. You're going to have it in an interest-bearing account. But if you're going to do longer term investments, you just want to make sure you're getting a good return for the taxpayers so you can ultimately pay down that debt. So that memo will go out to you today. And if anybody has any questions, certainly please give me a call.
Thank you, Mr. Betza. I see we have the mayor on. Mayor, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'm here mainly just to listen. I appreciate everything council is doing. Renee gave a great summary. Ed Betza gave really good insight in terms of the money from the water authority, what can and can't be done there. The only thing I guess I'd like to say is I'd like to thank Ed Betza for apologizing to Liz Allen. I hope that gives us the opportunity to move forward with a much more mutually respectful way of doing business here in the city. So thanks very much to both of you. And I hope everyone has a great day today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Osdeck, are you with us today?
It wasn't Ed Betza, it was Ed Brzezinski. I don't think Ed Betza and I have ever clashed or had to apologize to each other.
Thank you, Liz.
I miss meeting Ed in his office.
Yeah, probably because Ed had just spoken. I apologize for that.
Yeah, Ed B's, two Ed B's. Thank you.
President Winarski, I'm on the line, but I don't have a report for council today.
You don't? Why would? I'm giving you time.
I just missed everyone and wanted to hear your voices again. So
Okay.
have a good day.
Thank you all. I believe with that, we'll close our meeting. Thank you.
City Council adjourns at 10:04 a.m. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs.